is now actually a great pleasure for me to introduce Alan Taetle, who is one of the general partners at Noro-Moseley Partners here in Atlanta. So we're very fortunate to have Alan with us this evening because he lives day in, day out at the point of the spear, really anticipating where this industry is going and betting his own money and other people's money on that direction. So thank you very much for joining us, Alan. I have to admit, having been around the industry a while, I do kind of think back like 2000, 2008, every year it felt to me was going to be, this is the year of location-based services. Eventually it happened. I think we're now pretty familiar, pretty well adopted, so it's great. But what I'm wondering is, each of you, is there a technology that you're seeing, is there a solution that's kind of in a bit of a stall pattern that you think it's ready to kick out, and the next year or two is when we're going to see it grow? So maybe Alan, we'll start with you.
Sure, I'd be happy to start. First of all, I feel like a fossil. I don't know about the rest of you. After seeing those two videos, I just feel like a dinosaur. I don't know how you're living your life, but I feel very 1.0 right now. Thank you. Really not sure I want to talk, but I'll say a few things. You know, I think if Glenn had a little bit more time, he would start to talk about these devices, the biometric devices or the health and fitness devices. I have a Nike Fuel Band on right now. I have tried all of them. I've tried Fitbit, I've tried the Jawbone Up, and I think, by the way, that syncing a Jawbone Up through the headphone jack is one of the coolest things I've seen. I don't know how they do that. Anyway, the whole point around this, and this is very advantageous for Atlanta, is not only is it a great, sort of reinforcement tool, but all of our healthcare providers are starting to work around positive reinforcement, making sure you get your physical and lowering your rates around that. They're going to start to connect into this, and you're going to allow them to do that, but they're going to make sure that you're active and that they're keeping an eye on you. And that's going to happen in the next 12 to 24 months. It's sort of, I don't know exactly what that convergence looks like, but I'm very excited about it.
Thanks. I can add on, I know the Jawbone guys well. I can add on to that. I think the whole concept of wearables, everybody's talking about it. There's lots of rumors out there. People are building watches and things. You got the Up product and the things that Nike are doing. I'll just say this, what's amazing about it is a couple things. First of all, think about the data we're going to have. And I'll tell you this, everybody's been talking about big data for a long time. You and I have talked about big data. Big data is real. Think about, and he doesn't want to think this way, but think about the Up guys, what they'll know about you. They'll know about your mood. You'll know about every aspect of your body during the day, how you sleep. They'll know where you go. And think about the amount of data. Now, everybody goes, wait, time out, there's some privacy issues there. Let's keep those aside. Let's say we figure those out. Think about the amount, and by the way, it's funny because, us being fossils, because I'm right there with you, we're worried about privacy, and my 19-year-old who looks like who's in college could care less about what he puts on the web anytime he wants to. But I really do think the whole wearable thing is great, but when it really comes down to it, the amount of data that we're going to have about us and about who we are and what we do, and the ability for people to proactively do things for us, and help us make better decisions, to me, is probably one of the next biggest opportunities that we all have. And I look at the connected car, right? Obviously, if you have a GM car and you say, yep, I'm willing to allow you to utilize certain data of mine, think about the fact that when my 17-year-old daughter goes to get in that car, that I already know the right front tire is low. I already know that the clutch is worn, because a car is just basically a bunch of sensors in a computer. One of our partners today pulls 1,500 points of data a second off of every vehicle that's connected. So they can be proactive and help you be safer. And so to me, I think all these things, are really going to come back to how do we take and utilize that data and make our lives better, not do Big Brother and all that thing. I think you're all thinking about it.
So I'll just add one thing. I don't know if there's a technology that I would say is coming, but the thing that impresses me in watching what our students are doing is this notion of crowdsourcing. Mm-hmm. If you think about your phone as a sensor device, right? How many sensors have you got? Mm-hmm. And if you think about combining those sensors, I mean, it's one thing to have it on your body, sensing your biometrics and stuff. Think about a crowd, sensing in the crowd. Think about you're in an auditorium. You have all of those people that you could use as sensors. You can have a lot of data that comes back. You're in cars on the street, everybody in that whole street. What if you were in Louisiana when the hurricane was coming through, and all of those sensors could show emergency notification people, all the cars are stopped in this location. Send folks there. I mean, there's this huge amount of stuff that I think you can do with crowdsourcing that we haven't even scratched the surface on. And it's, I think our young people, I'm at .09, by the way. So,
Come on, Ron, show them your phone. Show them your phone, please.
He's not.
This man has no shame.
You know why people laugh at me when I carry this? Because I can text without looking, and you'll never know I'm texting while I'm talking to you. There you go. And I can't do that with a touch screen.
All right, good answers, guys. Thank you. Let me see, because I want to make sure the audience has a chance. Anybody got a question? We should get. Okay, great. If we've got a mic coming on over.
Yeah, if we could use
To the lady here, please.
Okay.
Great.
It's on. Oh, excuse me?
Good,
No, you
good,
don't have to,
good,
but you.
You don't have to sing. It's not karaoke. If that's what you're asking. Oh, okay. Okay.
What prevents emerging devices going into emerging markets?
What prevents emerging devices going? I don't think anything prevents it. And I think you've got a lot happening in emerging markets. The business model in emerging markets is very different. And if you're thinking about, when you think about India or China, some of the ones that people like to talk about, you know, and you also talk about India. In India, obviously, India's got a whole different set of rules. It's a different ecosystem. You buy the phone separate from you buy the service. ARPUs are $5, $6. And the hardest part about emerging devices is people being willing to pay for the value that they see in that device. Some of the best emerging devices are the ones you don't even know you're paying for wireless, which I'd argue is the Kindle and some of the great models where people don't even know that they're, you know, my favorite stories, we did focus groups when we were borrowing the Kindle from Sprint back when, and it came to AT&T, and we had people tell us, which I just love this, I said, well, you know, what do you think about the wireless? Well, what wireless? How do you think the book gets there? I don't care. It just works. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful business model. And so the more that we can look at emerging markets where we can embed the connectivity and make it simple, we have better luck. We're seeing a lot of carriers, really, you know, Barty and others are coming to us asking and looking for help because they're trying to figure out what makes sense. So one other answer to that is a lot of the emerging markets are also having the governments dictate certain things that make the devices happen. There are certain governments out there saying every car must be connected. There are certain governments making those because they want to be safer. They want to know what's going on. So I don't think there's anything stopping it. I think what we're seeing is finding the business models that make sense for everybody to be willing to put in the investment to make it happen.
I just want to add on a little bit because I'm not going to phrase that as a question because I do want to ask Alan a question about emerging markets. But a global perspective, the idea of a global SIM, for example, as a GSM carrier
Yes.
or an LTE platform, that's something we all need to think about. While we're here in Atlanta, we need to be thinking about global markets, whether they're emerging markets or mature markets, that the customers are looking for a single solution that works in a global footprint. Some customers, there's a valid case for it. And the question, Alan, I wanted to tee up to you related, I just don't actually know, maybe you could help us understand, as an investor in the investor community here in Atlanta, are you investing in opportunities where the emerging markets are a big play?
I think not yet. I think we still look at the domestic market primarily as the opportunity because it's just the easiest one to get to. But I don't think we're that far away from looking at Brazil and Korea. I will tell you that, you know, a lot of these emerging markets, if you call it Korea an emerging market, has better technology than what we have. So, you know, there's no device prevention there. But just to circle back around, in China, what's preventing devices is security. You know, I mean, I don't know about you, but if I go into China, I'm not bringing my phone. You know, I'm getting a brand new wiped phone because of security concerns. And I think a lot of folks, that prevents a lot of device adoption as well.
Good, thanks. Okay, gentleman with the mic.
Yeah, question about these mobile health devices. Is the top-level monetization path in terms of emphasizing preventative medicine and trying to provide reimbursement for that? Do you think that might be a path to really put mobile health devices on the map, and in terms of providing a monetization path for people to get used to wearing these devices if one is reimbursed for preventative medicine? or you think there might be other ways for?
No, I think that's a great, I absolutely think there are use cases around it. I mean, I think it was a Georgia Tech student, Ron, wasn't it a Georgia Tech student who did the study with the Fitbits? They gave a bunch of kids Fitbits at a private school here, and the amount of activity that it accelerated was dramatic. So thinking about fighting things like childhood diabetes and the cost associated with that, yeah, I absolutely think there's a top-down sort of model associated with these devices.
Yeah, all I'd say is I've got lots of examples where we believed we had a device that made sense. We had all the testing, everything done, and trying to wait for a payer to decide they're going to pay on it, we'll all be retired.
Exactly.
Right? And so we've taken more of a, let's let the consumer drive the approach first with certain devices. In fact, one of the ones we've been talking about for 2 years that we really felt and had all the clinical tests and everything was terrific was the Glow Cap, which was basically just an adherence device that reminds you to take your medication. And the stats are staggering. You know, half of people over 50 don't take their medication correctly, right? And so you go into that and it kind of funnels down the whole ecosystem. We had every single detail and still couldn't get a payer to say, you know what, let's do a trial where I pay for it.
Right.
So we just launched it in CVS and we're selling it to consumers.
Let me ask you, Ron, related to this topic.
Can I respond to that one?
Okay.
So I'm gonna push a little bit towards, forget about an app on a phone to do a thing.
Right.
What's the big picture you're looking for? And then how do these apps invisibly underpin? Think about the system. I'm a systems person. I don't think in small pieces. You got to think systems-wide. So if you think healthcare, if you take obesity, childhood obesity is an issue. Georgia Tech's working on that in a bunch of fronts. And a lot of the obesity issues is around education. It's around nutrition. It's around a lot of different things. It's around habits, forming habits. It's around exercise. It's all of these things. It's not one thing. And I don't think we're going to have one app that's going to solve one problem. We're going to have a system of things that then come together. And the providers may pay for results, whereas they won't pay for an app.
Great.
No,
Good.
it's a great point.
The gentleman over here.
Yes, I have a question. As all these devices are added to the market, what's your thoughts and comments for the battery makers and such to keep up with the power?
Longer, lighter, and cheaper. Anybody else going to add to that?
Yeah, I'll weigh in. I mean, we don't see, we actually are looking, and we have a lot of people come to us who believe they have breakthrough technologies around batteries. We haven't seen anything yet that we think is a massive paradigm shift forward. So if you can't fix the battery, you better fix the engine. And so our focus has really been on how do you make things smarter, operate better, more efficiently. You got these, quad-core processor smartphones. Do you really need a quad-core? We can have that conversation later. But you need to make, it's great marketing, you need to make sure that you start to make everything else around it operate more efficiently. The other thing that we're doing, and this goes back to Ron's point in the app, you got to make the app that is smarter. So in the case of Digital Life, every one of our devices that's out there is battery operated. And every single one of those will tell you anytime you want to see it and alert you when the battery's getting low. So we try to make it simple, even to, rather than you run around your house hearing a beep and figuring out which one of the smoke detectors is going out, right? Well, actually with IP can tell you exactly which one's low and all that. So you got to work everything else around it because we're just not seeing anything that's just going to all of a sudden we wake up one day and go, wow, we got a smartphone that lasts a week. It's just we don't see it happening anytime soon.
My phone lasts a week.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, we have the mic here.
I have a question. When the iPhone was first introduced, we saw, we were going to get down to one device. And now you have your campus where there's 25,000 devices. Are we ever going to get to that point where we have one device? No.
I'll be looking for a job.
Well, let me ask Ron on that point.
Yeah.
So why do they need so many? What are they all doing in an educational context? Do they need all these and use all these?
Well, I'll give you just my own experience here. I still have my laptop. I love my laptop. I like a lightweight laptop, but the real estate and the keyboard. I'm a touch typist. I can do 150 words a minute on a keyboard. I can't do that on my iPhone. And so I need that keyboard. I need the real estate for doing certain things, okay? I also have my iPad. The iPad is very portable, and it'll do a lot of stuff, but it doesn't do everything. And my iPhone is phenomenal. My iPhone is my office a lot of times. I can use it just about anywhere. especially since it's both the Wi-Fi and the cellular. So I'm not going to give up any one of them, but I can use any one of them in a pinch and do that. And I think the students are doing that plus more. They're doing their gaming stations are now wireless in their dorm rooms. You know, we had gigabit networks in the dorms, and I thought, we'll never need wireless. So we put wireless in the common areas. They want it everywhere. So now everything they have is wireless. If they want the gigabit, then they put it on the wire. I don't know if that answers your question.
I'll just say this, you know, our belief is that if it's got current running through it, it needs to be connected. Doesn't mean wide area connected. It could be Z-Wave, Zigbee, it could be a multitude of ways. And every device in the future will be connected, because if it's connected, it's smart. If it's not, it's dumb. And so everything, now how connected, how it works, how you operate it, is the smartphone the key to your life? We can debate that all day long, what happens in the car, the home, the office, but everything's going to be connected in some fashion.
So we have a question right here.
Yes, I'd actually like to take you back to the connected car. It can be extrapolated to, you know, digital home and digital world altogether. We've spoken a lot about the major player, a GM or a Tesla. There is a huge aftermarket environment out there. What do you see as the evolution of the aftermarket, you know, components, not only for the car, but for the home, and how it now integrates into what everybody else is trying to accomplish from those major carriers?
It's a good question. I'll start, guys. You know, jump in. I mean, look, first of all, aftermarket for the car is a huge opportunity. And right now, you've got a few people dabbling with OBD2 ports and doing different things. The thing you've got to do, and I'll go back to, I think both these guys have said, we've got to focus on the customer first. Okay, there's a lot of smart engineers in the room, like Hamish. If you build things engineering first, sorry guys, that doesn't work. Right?
Been drinking, obviously.
You've got to think about the consumer and how they want to do things. And one of the things we've learned is we saw OnStar a couple of years ago come out with a really nice rear view mirror. You know, it's going to be and they sold like 6, right? And because it just didn't work. It was a pain in the ass to get installed. So we've got to take this from the customer being the most important element and bring it back down. And when you do that, you've got to make things simple. So these OBD2 port concepts where you can plug in there, connect it to an app, potentially make that a 4G hotspot in your car, and really every car from, I believe, 99 on, you could make connected. That's some of the concepts that we're talking about. The underlying for the car, the home, and everything else is if you make individuals have 5, 6, 7 apps to rule their life, they're not ruling their life, the apps are ruling them. And so our goal is how do you aggregate all that into an experience? I think digital life is kind of our first shot at aggregating everything in your home into an experience. Hopefully we'll bring the car into that experience and other things in that experience. I was out, Tony Fadell, who's an old Apple guy who I know well, started Nest, is getting a lot of press and doing great. Tony's a great guy, really, really good guy. But what Tony's got is a one-trick pony, right? It's beautiful, it looks great in the house, and you can go on an app. But if that's all that one app does, that's where I don't understand where that goes. And so if you come in and I'll be able to show you my house, I've got 6 thermostats, and they all do the same thing Nest does. They're all in one app with everything else in my house. I think we've got to think about how we make this technology more simplistic, easier to use, and not intimidate people with it. That's, to me, going to be the goal of everything you just asked. And I'm not saying it's easy, I'm saying that should be aspirationally what we all try to do.
I want to actually ask Alan a bit of an investment perspective on this topic. Hearing all this great vision about the digital life, the connected car, all this great technology and the user interface, aftermarket versus a kind of greenfield carrier-provided solution platform. It's all great stuff. There's lots of options, a complex ecosystem. There's probably a lot of entrepreneurs here in the room. I was wondering, where would you advise is the area for an entrepreneur here in the room to go look? Where's the low-hanging fruit for an entrepreneur in this complicated world of the digital life or connected car?
There's just carnage everywhere. Connected car. I'd like to say otherwise. You can't have a car be an open system. It just frankly isn't going to work. So, and that's where most of the opportunities would be. And in the home, it's, as you said, Glenn, there's just so many legacy systems that you have to work yourself into that it's also very hard to get any kind of scale there. So I just, it's a lot easier to find a peer-to-peer application that's fairly interesting than it is to sort of take on those behemoths and try to figure out what's going to happen.
Great, no, thanks. Yes, Ron.
So I mentioned AT&T as a sponsor of a competition. Also this time, in the connected transportation category, it was Panasonic and GM along with you guys. And we actually had some students who used the OBD2 port to create applications. And so that is a way that our students are looking to do this today. And I think I'm agreeing with you on the open car. I think having your car on the internet without protection, you can have some interesting things happen. Because the OBD2 port, you can put on the brakes and open the windows.
So just to give you guys one of our partners, I won't say who, what they're trying to do is figure out at what level they want to lock down, right? And then they allow you to innovate above. And so they actually had a car with a hacker drive up to their car and take over the entire car. Brakes, gas, everything from a computer driving next to them down the road. And that made them nervous.
I want to come back in a minute to talk about the Metro Atlanta Chamber Initiative, and I know we're running out of time, so we're going to have one more question, then I'll...
a few questions in the back I haven't gotten to. So.
Yeah, well, but time, I presume, I'm here all night if you like, but... We'll do a couple more questions, folks will sit with us, that's good? All right, great, so the lady with the mic.
Hi, we were talking about the NCAA earlier, so how are you doing scale? So Ron's example of scale, we have stadiums, we have universities, we have smarter stadiums, and I know you're doing a lot of those contracts, but where do you see that in the future? Because it's going to be growing, not reducing.
We're just spending lots of money. We have a team now that is focused specifically on venues. We have for actually multiple years, and we just announced that. Many of you may have seen that thing we call Project VIP, where we spend a few bucks every year in CapEx, about $20 billion. We actually agreed, and Randall came out and said over the next 3 years we're going to spend about $14 billion more. And 8 of it was on wireless and the wide area network getting LTE in, but 6 of it was focused on exactly that. It's focused on landline, buildings, venues, DAS systems. And look, as Ron said it really well, if you're in a baseball Yankee stadium and it's the third inning ends and every single person stands up and clicks their phone, there's not enough anything anywhere in the world that allows you. So you have to go out and you have to do DAS, there's lots of technologies. Anybody go to the Final Four this year? Okay, perfect, so you and I can have a chat. No, Final Four this year, it was phenomenal, 73,000 people. In the Georgia Dome, and I promise you, I was clicking like a madman because my son goes to Louisville and wasn't there, and we performed beautifully, but that was enhanced. We use a lot of technology to do that. We need to do that everywhere, and that's what the wireless carriers want to make sure happens, and we want to do it faster than our competitors, obviously, and we're in the process of doing this as fast as we can, but you have to use other technology to make it work in those situations, and you have to overbuild for that rush that happens, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Just quickly, the Internet of Things, you ain't seen nothing yet about scale.
One last question from the gentleman back here.
Yeah, quick question here, I guess more on a somber note. In light of what happened in Boston this week, how do you see these technologies making our world safer and using those?
Let me direct the question starting one end of the table of you, Alan. Are you seeing investments in wireless security for the kind of applications the gentleman's referring to?
It's a great question. There has been technology around cameras and identifications for a while, but it goes back to like the house. I mean, there's just a lot of old cameras just aren't inherently integrated right now. So I mean, you could build it. There was a very good startup here in town that had some pretty cool technology about identifying threats within large areas and being able to pinpoint them. But they couldn't get it adopted because of cost and because of legacy systems associated with all these video systems out there. So the technology exists, it's just, are we going to spend the money to actually retrofit and throw out all the camera systems that we have and then be smart enough to act upon what we see as well?
I want to, Ron, ask you to pick up on this topic because Virginia Tech comes to mind, this topic here. And don't spill any secrets that would lower the level of security for your students and faculty on the campus, but what do you do using wireless technology for security applications?
Well, there's a couple of things that I can talk about. One is just the most simple thing that you can have. Our president said, Ron, I want a red button on my iPhone so that I can push the button and the police get called. And we had a student who spent about a week writing it for iPhone and for Android, and there's a big red button. You start the app as you're walking across the campus at 2 a.m. If you're dumb enough to walk across the campus at 2 a.m. By yourself. You probably need an app that's going to do that, but we've got it. We also had some students in the competition who did some things, again, around the power of the crowd. What if you're going to walk across the campus? You want to find other students who are going your same path and locate them with the location-based services and see that, and let them know that you're walking with them, and you can let the police know that you're walking in that crowd. And they all have cameras, and they can all take pictures of the stuff that's going around. So I think there are some things that we can do with current technologies, but again, it's more around the crowd than it is around specific application.
And Glenn, of course, digital life's very home-based.
Yeah.
And the car, okay, so that's starting to be more
Sure.
macro geography. Is there anything from an AT&T perspective you'd add on this theme of public space security?
Well, yeah, I think, that as a wireless carrier, we have responsibilities in public and emergency services and everything else. The message that we put out, the statement we put out right away was, if it's not an emergency, please text, that you can leave and everybody else could use the network, especially around the area where the incident happened. Back to Digital Life. In Digital Life, we're launching as a consumer product. Digital Life will be a small, medium, and large business product too. It's a platform that's scalable to allow you to see multiple cameras in multiple times, multiple ways. And just give you an example, in my personal home, we put cameras outside with motion detectors, and I put a simple program in there. It took me about a minute to build that said, if you see motion from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m., I want a text that tells me, and I want a picture taken. Pretty simple. And then I saw my daughter's boyfriend leave a little late. It works a lot of ways. But the point is that that's a simple app. I mean, we literally, just real quick, we had an employee, and I told this story at CES, we had an employee, if somebody was stealing Christmas presents, so the UPS truck would come up, they'd drive up and steal the packages. And this on his street. And he decided on his own, as part of our trial, he took his outside camera, turned it, set his protocol so that when it saw motion, it would take video, and literally got his video text, and there was the robber stealing his package. And he called the police, showed it to them, they arrested him in 30 minutes. It was one of the neighbors that was stealing the packages. So, that sucks, I know. But the point is the technology is just that simple. He wrote a program in a minute that allowed him to do that. And I think the point is for consumers it's one thing, but for businesses, we, again, have to build things, to your point, that allow us to get better and allow us to be able to handle these situations. I don't know how you handle a situation that took place in the middle of a public place. It's very difficult. Yeah. But I think the technology will be our answer. Technology is always our answer, right, to drive to that next place.
Well, let me switch from technology to organization to community. The Metro Atlanta Chamber initiative that Larry, thank you for introducing earlier. So the question actually I have is, because you are world travelers, and so you work around the world, you travel around the world, you see and absorb a lot of information. Is there a region in the US or anywhere else in the globe that you think today is recognized as the global leader for mobility? Is there another place that we have to displace? Our organization? Who's leading the trend?
AT&T, of course.
Oh.
I would say that, right, the big shows today, everything's wireless. So last year at CES, CEA runs that show. And I was talking with Gary Shapiro, who runs that show. He's the CEO of CEA. I said, Miles, just name it the wireless CES. Because everything was about wireless. I mean, for the first time ever, they had every automaker there. For the first time ever, right? Everything was about wireless. Everything was about where wireless is going. Everything's about how to make my product better with wireless. And so I think when you look at those kinds of opportunities, whether it's those big shows, it's the one in Barcelona, obviously is a huge show. Those cities, like Barcelona calls themselves, the wireless hub of the world, but they don't have LTE. They have a hard time with that, right? They run on 3G. And so I think the opportunity for the U.S., which is leading the world in wireless, is significant, and I see no reason why it can't be here.
Great. And Alan, from an investor community, thinking at least US perhaps, maybe globally, do you see a geographical region that's leading the way by making more in proportional investment in wireless technologies than the Atlanta area. Who do we have to beat?
Well, I mean, yeah, Silicon Valley comes to mind. I think they do a pretty good job. I mean, I think they, you know, when you have Apple down the street and they're sort of sharing, they probably share some stuff with Glenn, but they don't share that much stuff with me. I think that, you know, that makes a huge difference when you get to preview what an iOS is, you know, or what the, you know, Android's going to look like from Google's perspective. And they got great UI UX people there, to Glenn's point about, you know, usability. I mean, some of the best UI UX people in the world are in Silicon Valley, and that's a key differentiator. We have some good ones here too. I'm not saying we don't. We just have a lot more.
Great. And in academia, higher ed in particular, research community, in your community where you go to conferences or you meet with your peers are on, is there a place that you look at as a role model for you to emulate in terms of what they've achieved with wireless?
Well, I'm going to be a bit arrogant and say that we've tried really hard to make Georgia Tech.
I could believe it.
The best space for this from a networking standpoint with our connectivity out to the rest of the world. We've got multiple 10 gigabit connections out to lots of different networks. On the wireless side, you know, 3,500 access points, 30,000 concurrent users is not too shabby. I know there are other schools who are doing that. There's probably a few up in the Northeast that I won't name, but
Kudzu use
on the West Coast, there's some schools that we have friends and we have friendly competition over, but I'm going to say Georgia Tech's been pretty good with that.
Excellent. Well, great. So that's very encouraging, I think, that there's plenty of opportunity for us to compete as a city, as a metro region, and we really appreciate what the Chamber of Commerce is doing to lead the way. So thank you for doing that. So with that, I know we've kind of run a bit over the scheduled time, so at this point I'd like to ask you all to please join me in thanking our